Hey folks, and welcome back to Glenn and Adrian's Rock Talk. Adrian, how are you today?
All right. How are you, Glenn?
Doing quite well. I've been on a real Bowie binge lately. That was precipitated by our decision to cover the Bowie album, The Man Who Sold the World. Incidentally, this particular cover is the American release cover. And you'll notice he's wearing something called a man dress. And this is about a dozen years before Boy George. David Bowie was known for being a bit androgynous as part of his many personalities, you know. It actually went over very well. Everybody thought, geez, you know, he actually looks pretty good. One critic said something about he looks like Lauren Bacall sitting there, you know. It also got released with this cover, and this is actually a reissue. The original name of this was supposed to be Metropolist. It's similar to the Metropolis. It's kind of inspired.
Yeah, it's kind of a play on that title, I think.
And as you can see, this is completely different artwork, which Bowie, I guess, originally liked, and so it ended up on the UK, but then changed his mind and went with the other one for whatever reason. And this particular one has all the lyrics on the back, which is great. This is actually a pretty recent reissue, and I think it's still possible to get it for a very reasonable price as vinyl goes these days. I think I paid $18 for this, but it was probably a couple of years ago.
Oh, that's a good price.
Yeah, so pretty nice little package here.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are mostly outtakes from the other cover session. But anyway, they're both the exact same record. I actually spun both of them a few times. It's his third album.
His third album, yeah.
It's his third album. It's funny how Bowie's career went. He had that first album in about 1967 called David Bowie, which was really just a kind of a lot of folky pop tunes, which he wrote. However, it was very different from what we got to know as David Bowie. This is before Major Tom and Space Oddity. Yeah, his very first album is not very well regarded. He's still quite young here. He did write all the songs, but he was all of, 19?
Yeah, it was about that time. He was probably 19 years old or something. It was in 1967. I've heard the album, and it's got some psychedelic inspiration to it, I guess, or something. A lot of the songs sound kind of like psychedelic, kind of like you could hear the Syd Barrett influence.
Yeah, that is true. He was a huge Syd Barrett fan. He was a big fan of Syd's and certainly attended a lot of the shows, I would imagine, back then, because the London scene wasn't really all that big and everybody knew each other. Mm-hmm. So it's like the same time period as Pink Floyd, playing UFO. Yeah, so the second album is the one that had Space Oddity on it. And it was 2 years later. And that was really the first one where he was starting to really inch towards the person that we got to know as David Bowie, the artist. But really, the first one where he's really kind of fully formed as that David Bowie is this one. It's the Man Who Sold the World. And of course, as we all know, Kurt Cobain was a fan of the record and also of the song, Nirvana covering it on their MTV Unplugged. I recall at the time, I think a lot of people got excited hearing them play it because they said, this is a new song. Is this a new Nirvana song? And then at the end, he's like, this is a David Bowie song. You guys knew that, right? So Adrian, you gave this a listen and you've heard it before. Do you have any specific thoughts you want to go over for, say, we could go over the first song, Width of a Circle.
Yeah, Width of a Circle. Yes, I actually got introduced to this song not by this album, but by the DVD Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, because he plays it during that show. That's the one song from this album that he plays on that show.
Okay. And, it's largely the same band. And Woodmansey, this became the band, I think maybe except for Tony. Take a look at that. Except for Tony, I believe that became the Spiders from Mars band. And they had actually started off as a band named Hype. And they were originally going to record Man Who Sold the World as Hype's first album. But that's not what turned out to happen. Yeah, that's right. So later on, Trevor Bolder took over bass.
Yeah.
Tony Visconti became Bowie's producer.
I think he produced this album, didn't he?
Yeah, he produced this one. And he produced several more.
I think this was Tony Visconti's first album as well. The first album where he participated and produced and that.
Yeah, that's right. And he came back in time for the Low album and the Berlin trilogy, but we can get to that a little bit later on. But yeah, Width of a Circle, that thing struck me as kind of a Black Sabbath vibe, frankly. It sounded like they'd listened to Sabbath. But there's other stuff too. It also kind of sounds like Cream, Spoonful at parts, where they go off as a trio, a power trio for a little while. Just a lot of the heavy rock from the 1968 era. It's kind of what it sounded like to me. I actually love that track, Width of a Circle, and it's the track that really kind of roped me into this particular album. Because Bowie has so many records. If you haven't been following the whole time, you kind of have to sit there and go, where do I start? This is not a bad place to start. Anyway, I got intrigued, and now it's one of my favorite albums by Bowie, but we'll get back to that. That's a hard statement to make, frankly. So the next song on this is called All the Madmen.
Yes.
This is the one. It's very folky like at the beginning, and there's even recorders. There's two recorders. They're kind of following along the vocal.
Yeah, the second verse, I guess. The first verse is just guitar, and then the second, the recorders come in, and then the full band comes in at the chorus, I guess.
Yeah, and then they break into like this hard rock bolero, and it's got multiple rhythms going on, which I think is extremely cool.
Yeah.
And before it actually goes to the next verse after that, it kind of stops for a while and goes into this weird little psychedelic kind of a little poetry reading break or something, with the motor behind it. You're like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden they come crashing back into the next verse. So I just love all that. I think it's amazing.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in that quiet part. I think there's also, I think there's the part that David Bowie is reciting, and then there are some other voices in the background. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting song, I think. It's kind of it kind of talks about how about, I guess, nonconformity or something like that. He uses the image of being in a madhouse with with all the
like they're shipping everybody off to like the other side of town to this madhouse. That's kind of what I think the words.
I don't know much behind the song, but it's a pretty song.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of it, like part of it says, "Don't set me free. I'm as heavy as can be. Just my librium and me, and my EST makes three." Yeah, and my libido's split on me. Give me a good old lobotomy, So, yeah. Outskirts of town, kind of the outcasts.
Yeah. Rather stay here with all the madmen. I'm quite content they're all as sane as me.
Really something. Yeah, these are lyrics that are really satisfying when you dig into them. You're like, oh, that is great. That was a great idea.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, so next one is Black Country Rock. And this is kind of the more, I almost want to say conventional, but it's really not, because it does weird things as well. But it feels like the most conventional track on the album.
Yeah. It sounds like it's like a rock that you climb up, and you see the view is wonderful and everything. The view might be a little crazy, but or it might be too hazy.
Yeah, that's right.
If it's much too hazy, you can leave my friend and me with fondue.
Very cool stuff. Very cool guitar work on it. I love the riff on it. Next track is After All. This one I had to play several times, but I actually really love this track too.
Yeah, I like the tune to it. It sounds like a bunch of children before they get corrupted by adulthood or something.
Yeah. By the way, they put "Oh by Jingo" right there on the back cover, so clearly it's an important line. And that's the refrain in this song. It just keeps coming back. Trip them gently, they don't like to fall. Oh by Jingo, no room for anger. We're all very small. Oh by Jingo. I mean, it's a sing with impertinence, shading, and permanent chords with my words. I've borrowed your time and I'm sorry I called, but the thought just occurred that we're nobody's children at all. After all. Yeah, it's kind of a dark track, actually. But I like it a lot. I mean, it makes one of those moods that you could hear once in a while on the last record, actually. Some of the songs on the Space Oddity record, that kind of unsettled mood kind of going on with. Yeah, it does. It almost sounds like there's a herd of like Lord of the Flies children in the woods or something. You know, like they're singing to each other. Oh, you're so screwed. So next track on this goes to side 2, Running Gun Blues.
Clearly about Vietnam. It's a reference to Vietnam, obviously, when you look at the lyric.
I had thought maybe it was just a serial killer, but actually your description sounds more likely.
I cut 23 down since Friday. I can't control it.
Yeah, it also sounds like it could be about a serial killer.
Yeah.
My instinct still emotes it.
It's just very cool stuff. I mean,
yeah.
How can you not love that groove? All that weirdness going on.
Mm-hmm. I think the music to it is, it's pretty interesting. And it's just, it's, I think the first time I really looked at the lyrics.
Yeah, the lyrics all over this record are really good. As a matter of fact, I've discovered over time that if you put the time into reading David Bowie's lyrics, you're going to come away a winner. There's going to be something good there. Well, okay, moving on to Savior Machine.
I can steal every mind.
Second song on side 2. Now, Savior Machine, of course, kind of about organized religion.
Yeah, that's sort of the idea I got, anyways.
So he told him his scheme for a savior machine. They called it the prayer. Its answer was law. Its logic stopped war, gave them food. How they adored, till it cried in its boredom. Please don't believe in me. Please disagree with me. Life is too easy. A plague seems quite feasible now. Or maybe a war. Or I may kill you all.
Oh,
yeah. Your minds are too green. I despise all I've seen. You can't stake your lives on a savior machine.
A lot of David Bowie songs. I mean, the lyrics, they're kind of hard to figure them out. At least for me.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is he's sharp. He knows what he's doing. He's a very smart man, or he was. And it really shines through. I mean, he was.
And this is probably my favorite song on the record too. By the way,
Savior Machine.
Yeah.
I love it. And you know what occurred to me afterwards is there's a couple of things. Before that song, there was a song on Quicksilver's first album called Gold and Silver, which has a very similar gallop to it. And after this record came out, and not long after, the Allman Brothers recorded their Live at Fillmore East album. And I'll tell you what it sounds like. Hotlanta. And the live version of Whipping Post. Very much does the same kind of gallop. This sounds like the beginning of Whipping Post.
Oh yeah, it does. I never thought of that.
So I'm gonna put kind of a theory out there that the Allmans heard this album and were probably playing it a lot. And then it just kind of pieces of it worked its way, as so many artists, same thing happened to so many artists with David Bowie, but pieces of it worked their way into their set, and then they made songs out of it. I think Hotlanta was a brand new song at the time.
Oh, okay.
And Whipping Post was quite different than it was on the original recording.
On the album.
It still had the triplets, but it wasn't quite the same. I mean, that sounded almost exactly like parts of the initial solos.
Yeah.
By both Dwayne and Dickie. Thought that was worth mentioning.
Yeah.
Okay, so next song is She Shook Me Cold. It's very good. It's got that heavy sound from those
Yeah.
60s. I mean, clearly something. I mean, I don't know if you were reminded of anyone in particular, Adrian, but I couldn't really put my finger on it.
So, well,
But it sounds
I'm
like,
trying to think. I mean, it sounds like a lot of stuff that was going on
yeah,
those days anyway. I could understand somebody comparing this to like maybe early Sabbath or
yeah.
Zeppelin, but even, yeah, Sabbath.
You know what I just thought of while listening to that? Saint Vitus.
Oh,
A few years later.
yeah.
Definitely something along those lines. Yeah, this sounds like Cream in the middle of a spoonful.
Oh,
Even that's an Eric Clapton lick.
yeah, it does sound very familiar.
Totally Cream 1968 right there. I'm actually kind of thrilled that in these really intricate David Bowie songs, the band still found room to really jam out in a heavy way. So that one also I find really quite cool. And I should mention, I mean, for a long time, I just kind of played this album, thought Width of a Circle, great. Man Who Sold the World, great. The other stuff, it's all right. Got to grow on me for a while. And that, took a couple of years, but finally, all of these songs on this album are worthwhile. Speaking of which, the next one is The Man Who Sold the World.
The first time I heard this song, it was Nirvana.
You're not alone.
I eventually got to hear the original version of it. To be honest, I like it better than Nirvana's version.
Yeah.
Not that they didn't do a good version, because they did, but
yeah.
It's the
Well,
original.
they did a wonderful, faithful version, and really nice. And it was completely out of left field in a way.
Yeah.
I think that's why it took everyone by surprise. At the time, I had not heard David Bowie's version.
Yeah.
This is back in '94, of course, almost 30 years.
Yeah. Probably a lot of people from that time didn't make the connection because they hadn't heard the David Bowie original version.
True. It had been about 24 years or something by that time. So 25, I don't know, somewhere in there. And you listen to it, and there's so much Moog, and it's such a spooky piece.
Yeah, I love the
It's
vocals.
glorious. It's so weird, but it's so glorious. It's beautiful stuff. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Really nice. Ah, well. So then the album closes with the song The Supermen, which is another track that I, as usual, I really like. And I think it was very well constructed. It kind of gave me vibes of how Jimi Hendrix ended his first album with Are You Experienced, or how the Beatles ended Revolver with Tomorrow Never Knows. It's kind of got that topper, that really strong psychedelic topper feeling to it, to me,
Yeah. Timpani as well.
Yeah.
I think I heard Timpani on that song. I kind of wonder if this might have been from Nietzsche's idea of the Superman.
Absolutely would not surprise me. He sounds well read to me when I read his lyrics. I mean, like I was going to say, he's kind of a peer, but not as good as Neil Peart. But he's kind of a peer with him in terms of how he writes and his imagination. And I think Neil Peart was pretty special. So
Yeah,
I don't know if I could put David Bowie up there with him in terms of the lyrical content, but
you can't put many people up with Neil Peart.
Yeah, he gets a very high grade. Let's put it that way. He writes really good lyrics, no question about it.
Yeah.
It's just that when all the world was very young and mountain magic heavy hung, the supermen would walk in file, guardians of a loveless isle.
Oh boy.
Far out in the red sky, far out from the sad eyes, strange mad celebration, so softly a super god cries. Or dies,
Oh, okay.
I don't know. What do you think? So Nietzsche's concept was of the Übermensch, which is the Superman.
Yeah,
Superman. And it's a philosophical ideal. Übermensch is a human being who has overcome the limitations of traditional morality and religion and who has created their own values and purpose in life. Self-determined, not afraid to take risks or challenge the status quo. Kind of sounds like David Bowie himself. Maybe this means the Christian God is dead, and that this has left a void in human morality. I think that's one of the main ideas behind it. Anyway, It is quite possible that alludes to that.
Yeah.
But more study is needed, I think. I'm sure that among our viewers, there are people that have studied this album for years, decades even. So anybody out there that has their own theories or ideas or insights into what any of the lyrics on this record mean, please share them. I think they would make for a good comment section. Try to figure out what Bowie was talking about on this record. But in any case, I want to say that I really do love this record a lot. At first I thought, this has to be maybe my favorite record. And then I thought about it, I'm like, this is David Bowie. He's made so many excellent albums. So I went through my collection and I found a few others. I'm going to say it's one of the essential records you should have. If you're building a Bowie collection and you've got like 5 records, that should be one of them.
This song, this album doesn't have a lot of hits on it or anything. It doesn't have any major hits or anything, but it's still a very important album.
Yeah, well, it just kills. It kills. And that actually brings me to some of the other albums that I would put on that top 5 list. This is definitely my top 5 album, one of my top 5 albums of Bowie, along with Ziggy Stardust, which, who knows? I'm not even going to try to rank these. That was the one after Hunky Dory, so the 5th one. Then we have Station to Station, which is from 1970, early 76, recorded in 75. This is the Thin White Duke time. There's a great song on it actually called Station to Station. He does an amazing Nina Simone cover in Wild as the Wind. And all these songs are great, man. They're all great. Stay is it's got a great groove, great lick. It kills. So this is another definitely top 5 album. Then we go to Low. This one is the one that actually came after Station to Station, and it's completely different. The first side is all kind of new wave experiments, and this is 1976 that it's getting recorded and then released early 77. Everybody that heard this record at the time went out and started a new wave band or a post-punk band or something like that, because it's got this funky drum sound on it that's what we ended up hearing all over the 80s. But at the time, it was the first time, and it sounded amazing. It was just like that. So you've got 7 songs on the first side, and they're all pretty strange and very, very. And Brian Eno too is working on it. Okay. There are no hits on this thing. And side 1 is the one that sounds like that. Side 2 is more of an ambient record. It's 4 long synthesized pieces with very minimal lyrics, a little bit of saxophone on the last one, Subterraneans, that I think Bowie himself plays. But it's a totally different vibe, and it's also very cool. And the thing about this record is that it's, as I keep hearing people say, and I think it's true, it's a self-contained universe. It's a weird place that you don't often find yourself in, but it carries through the entire album. It's just a different universe for you, So many people regard this as his best album. I'm not sure I agree, but I certainly do enjoy this album a lot and put it in the top 5.
You should give that a listen sometime.
Yeah, it's worthwhile. And the last one I would put in the top 5 is Scary Monsters, which did have a hit on it in Ashes to Ashes. This came out in 1980. So this came out right after he was finished working with Eno in Berlin, after they put out a couple more records. They put out Heroes and Lodger, and then this came out in 1980. This record is solid from start to finish. It's good listen, hangs together well, really hook music. It also has the hit Fashion on it, but that's don't let that color your feeling about it. The whole thing is just a great work of art.
Oh, all right.
So those are my top 5 anyway. So Scary Monsters, Low, Station to Station, Ziggy Stardust, and The Man Who Sold the World.
I can think of a couple favorites of mine anyway, other than The Man Who Sold the World, is the Space Oddity album I really like. And
good one.
And there's also Aladdin Sane.
Yeah, that is also, they're both great records. There's no question. That's the thing. He just kept pumping out great albums.
Yeah.
A couple of things that weren't as, but it's hard to go wrong in the 70s. I mean, I don't have pinups. That one kind of got low reviews, but on the other hand, it's also got his version of See Emily Play on it, so it'd be nice to have that one.
He did that song, yeah.
Yeah. Pinup is the covers album that he did. So.
Oh, okay.
And the album after Scary Monsters was Let's Dance. And actually,
yeah, I was going to mention that because I think that came out in 82 or something like that.
Yeah, it was either 82 or 83. In any case, the reason it took a while to come out is because, Bowie had worked with John Lennon. They wrote Fame together, the song Fame, a hit song. And Bowie also covered Across the Universe on the same album.
Oh.
That was why he approached Lennon in the first place. Said, hey, you want to check it out? Because he was recording in New York.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So what happened was he was in New York for 1980 to record Scary Monsters. And it turned out that Mark David Chapman, who shot Lennon, also was kind of thinking he'd like to shoot David Bowie as well.
Oh, boy.
It was another target in his mind. And so this whole thing, of course, first of all, Lennon was a friend. But after it happened, he got completely freaked out. He canceled plans for a tour for the album, did not tour. And he went off and kind of became a recluse for a couple of years. And on the other side of that, his album Let's Dance came out. So he kind of went through a profound change. Yeah. And it's actually arguable that was the point that his creativity peaked. And he did plenty of great material afterwards. Don't get me wrong. There are albums that I love that came after the 80s. And, Heathen is one that I really like from, I think, 2000 or 2002, somewhere in there. And Reality is another one. But still, the 70s were so strong for Bowie. I mean, it was epic. I mean, any artist, even to have one or two albums like that would have been feeling pretty good. Yeah, that was unfortunately a turning point. It's kind of interesting. For those of you that have not checked out Bowie carefully over the years, and I know that I was like that for a while. It took me some time to get around to Bowie.
Same here.
But I got there. And I can't live without so much of his music now. It's just amazing, and it continually provides new surprises because it's so dense. There's so many things going on in each of his compositions. You can just stay entertained forever.
I haven't heard much stuff after Let's Dance.
His last album is supposed to be excellent. Black Star is supposed to be one of his best, since Scary Monsters.
I haven't heard of Black Star.
Yeah, it came out on his 69th birthday, and it passed away 2 days later. And it was deliberately created knowing he had the knowledge that he was going to pass away. And so he created the record as kind of a parting gift. And so it's pretty deep.
Yeah, I guess so.
He was a pioneer. He just did whatever he thought was the right thing to do. He took on so many personalities.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just in the 70s alone, what's he going to do this time?
Yeah.
So,
he's pretty good at that.
Yeah. Yeah, so we definitely recommend a deep dive into Bowie. His 70s output in particular, and a great place to start is with Man Who Sold the World. Of course, just keep in mind there are good things on either side of the 70s for David Bowie. He was a great artist, no question. So, if any of you have any other comments or things you think we missed, please put them down below and we can discuss them. And in the meantime, if you wouldn't mind giving us a like and a subscribe, that would be wonderful. If we can help make your lives feel a little bit better, even for a few minutes, well, that's great. All right. Okay. Till next time, folks. Take care.
See you later, folks.